G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Join us today. We have the creator and the expert of the Bitcoin power law, Giovanni. Now, Giovanni has a PhD and is an astrophysicist. Giovanni, it's such a pleasure to have you on today. Bitcoin is designed to go up forever. The power law may be the mathematical reason behind this. It may be the telescope that shows us where Bitcoin's trajectory is over time. I've watched quite a few videos of you explaining the Bitcoin power law, and you're an astrophysicist, Giovanni, which is incredible. You're thinking at a very high level, a mathematician. For me, I've always struggled for maths, so I've brought you on today to break down the power law in a really super simple, concise way that the average person that's looking at Bitcoin, that they're looking at the Bitcoin price, can look at the power law chart, see where Bitcoin has been. It's got a bit of history behind it, 5 years, and we can dive into that, and where Bitcoin's going to go according to mathematics, not according to hopium, according to the power law or the Bitcoin power law that you've brought into the space. But before we get into that, Giovanni, it's such a pleasure to have you on. This is a real treat. And shout out to everyone that is watching live, watching the replay. If you can smash the like button, hit subscribe. But how are you today, Giovanni?
I'm fine, great. What about you? What any spiders in your home?
Not today. They'll come back as it gets a little bit colder. They'll seek the indoors.
I see. Is what I think when I think about Australia, you know.
They're just a part of life. So, Giovanni, I think you've got a screen to share. I'll bring this up and. Yep. For everyone here, hopefully you can see it clearly. Let us know how the audio is going. But Giovanni, the floor is yours, mate. Just go over and let us know what the power law is, how it works, how it came about, and where we're going with Bitcoin, I guess. Everyone wants to know number go up.
Every time. I don't know Australian, but maybe we are more direct when, you know, like kind of almost like Italians, Anglo-Italians, you know, something like that. So interrupt me if you want to ask a question and say that this is how we do it in Italy, you know. So
great.
Let me know if I say something that doesn't make sense or you want to intervene or whatever. So anyway, so the entire idea of this story of a power law is that you know, using that method of science, you can actually dig in and look at you know, what Bitcoin is doing and discovering very, very interesting properties that Bitcoin has that I will explain in a moment. But the reason why I made this title is because in the end, we go beyond the mathematics, because if these things that I discover are really true and maybe other scientists come in and confirm it, etc., it tells us something about the nature of Bitcoin, that Bitcoin is much more than just an asset, that there is almost like a philosophy behind Bitcoin. It's an expression of all these things that many times we say as Bitcoiners in terms of, you know, our intuition. But I like what kind of you say that, you know, Bitcoin is always going up, right? We have this feeling if you are a Bitcoiner, but now we have the mathematics to show that. But also all the other things, like we say, hey, Bitcoin is about value, right? That we are putting value in these things. It's about energy. It's about time. It's about all these things that are important and they relate all to each other. So the studying of this power law is much more than just mathematics. It goes beyond. I apologize for that.
Giovanni, I just think one thing really quickly that may help people relate, like all of the power law back to everything you just said as well, is everything is energy and mathematics. Like that's the universal code. So like all our feelings about Bitcoin, the spiritual side of Bitcoin or the power law side of Bitcoin, if mathematics is the language of the universe, like of course it all ties together.
Correct. And so this is why I have also these slides, because, you know, being a scientist, of course, I want to look at Bitcoin from a scientific point of view. That is the beauty of Bitcoin too, right? Everybody has different angles, you know, and we all contribute because there are different things that interest. It's almost like a mirror, you can see whatever
Yeah.
you want. But the beauty of science is also they bring some objectivity. It's not just about feelings. It allows us to use the tool of science, to understand Bitcoin, what it's doing, and have a little bit more certainty that actually we are on the right track, right? Because one of the things that we learn from science that you listen to nature, you don't impose on nature your own preconceived ideas. You want to listen what nature says and learn from nature. So I have this attitude towards Bitcoin. When somebody tells me this and this other, say, why don't we listen to Bitcoin? Why don't we listen what Bitcoin says? And then we learn from Bitcoin. That is why I have this picture. Also because it's kind of almost like a Copernican revolution. This guy is supposed to be Copernicus, and looking like a Renaissance scholar, looking at Bitcoin like a new star, or a new astronomical phenomena. And so we want to revolutionize, almost like Copernicus or these guys, Galileo, etc., did during the Copernican revolution. It's changing upside down our understanding of Bitcoin. So the usual place where I start is this chart. This is because this is where you really understand the significance of the power law and how we discover the power law. So this graph is the usual graph that they show on TV. They show what is called a linear graph, right? It's linear in the y-axis, where we put price, and linear on the x-axis, where we put time. Here, time is measured in terms of days from the Genesis block. The Genesis block is when Bitcoin was created. As a reminder, that happened in January 3, 2009. So these are the days from that time, from that crucial time when Bitcoin was created. So
yeah, one question.
Yeah.
Just when you say like a linear axis, can you just explain that? Like, because you're going to show a couple of charts, can you just maybe take 1 or 2 minutes, Giovanni, to break down the y-axis, the x-axis, and sort of how a chart is formed, maybe, or just the basis?
Yeah. So linear, well, linear we mean everything it's just normal, right? Like $1 will be $1, $10 will be $10. The problem with that, and times the same thing with time, right? Everything is going up linearly. So 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days. Like here I'm showing days, right? There are some times where this chart is useful, both in financial analysis, but also in science. If you plot something, if you have something that grows relatively slowly, that's proportional, where you have a y-axis, I don't know, let's say temperature and pressure. You're studying a gas, you have a pressure, you have temperature, they go up linearly, one proportional to the other. It's okay to show in a graph like that. The problem with Bitcoin, you can see already immediately what happens. Look at this. In the beginning, the price of Bitcoin was so small, was like a fraction of $1, but when you plotted in all these numbers, going from all the way to 60,000, 70,000, right? It's not up to date, this chart, but it still makes the point. So we had a peak over there. You see how in the beginning, everything looks flat, right? That is a problem with this chart because it doesn't show in proportional fashion what happened when Bitcoin was so small. It almost looks like nothing, right? It looks flat. That is the problem. It emphasizes only the big prices because they dominate over the small ones. So that is one of the problems with this chart. And also you can see if there is a pattern there, it's dominated by the noise. The noise in this case are this fluctuation. And this is why this chart is always shown on TV, like on, we have in America this CNBC show. I don't know if you have something equivalent in Australia. It's basically a financial show. And most of the time they are not Bitcoin friendly. They want to make fun of Bitcoin, maybe because this gives them, clout with their public. Many of them are now Bitcoiners. So they want to show how crazy and stupid Bitcoin is, according to them, because it fluctuates so much, right? They say, hey, look, it goes all the way to 70,000, sure. But look, it crashed all the way to 16. It's a stupid asset. Why do you want to invest in this thing? Maybe they don't use these words, but this is what they try to kind of hint, right? That is a very unstable. It's very, it fluctuates too much. There is too much volatility. If it goes to 70 and then 16, it's possible next time it goes to 100 and then to 0, So why will you want to invest on this? This is why this graph is not good. It's a linear graph. Now, one way of remediate to the fact that we have this large change in price, from a fraction of a dollar all the way to almost $100,000, is to do what is called the log linear chart. So the log linear chart is when you take the log of a y-axis and you keep the x-axis the same, still linear, like 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and so on. Now, what happens? So first of all, let me explain what a log is, right? So a log, it's a simple function. Probably you studied in middle school, in high school. It's what it does. So when you have a lot of changes, right, that go, so if you have a quantity like Bitcoin that went from being a fraction of a dollar all the way to 100,000, what you want to focus in what we call the scale or order of magnitude. What it means. It's much better to write these numbers in this scientific notation, how we call it. It's if I have 10, for example, I write it as 10, right? If I have 100, I write it as 10 to the 2, because basically 100 is 10 times 10. So you write as an exponent, so 10 to the 2. If I have 1,000, 1,000 is 10 times 10 times 10, so 10 to the 3. 10,000, 10 to the 4. The beauty of doing it in that way is that now you can see how the price changes in terms of this scale. So multiples of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, and so on. Now, if you take the log, what the log does, it gives you the exponent. So if think about almost like a little box, I put inside in the box 100, that is 10 to the 2, and it gives me the exponent, it is that 2. So this is why I have 2 here in the chart. That means 100, right? So the log is extracted me, it gives me as an output the little exponent. And then 3 means 10,000, 1,000, 4 means 10,000, 100,000, a million. Look what happens now. And the negative number means a fraction. So, for example, 1 over 10 is 10 to the minus 1. That is minus 1 if you take the log. Okay? And 0 means 1. The beauty of doing it in this way is that now we show proportionally all the changes of Bitcoin. This is why now what it looked flat before in the beginning of the curve, now you can see it. Now you can see how everything changed proportionally, right? So it kind of gives the same weight to all these changes in terms of their change by a factor of 10. It's a nice way of showing the progression of Bitcoin and showing that everything changed in a proportional fashion, right? So yes, here we had a big bubble, but it went all the way to like $12 or something like that, $20. And it was a big deal at that time because the price was about $1. Now this other bubble was all the way to 1,000. It was a big deal at that time because the price was around $100, and so on. See, everything proportional. This is the beauty of using these logs. I know that people are not familiar with them, but there is a usefulness of them. Now, when you do this, now I already drawn the kind of is a spoiler because I already draw a pattern there, that is a power law, what we will find in a moment. But forget for a moment the bands and forget the line in the center. Imagine you see only the black curve. And by the way, the red stars here are the halvings. It's very different chart from before. First of all, 2 things are happening. One, these bubbles that were so dominant before and very noisy are becoming less dominant, right? You can see that they are there, they are big, but they don't look like the main signal, right? In fact, they are noise. They are kind of almost like a deflection from the real story that is this general trajectory, right? That's the first thing that we observe. The second thing is there is a trajectory. There is some kind of regularity in this price, that is not obvious immediately because, human eyes, I cannot look at this chart and say, oh, yeah, of course, this is this equation. I don't have that power. There are mathematical tools that you can use, but it's not immediate, right? It doesn't strike you. It looks much regular. It looks much more nicer, right? Now, the other thing that, and it looks like it's going up, right? It's going up. It continues to go up and so on. That is also the other nice thing about this chart. The other thing that this chart teaches that many people, in fact, even when I started to join for the first time, they say, oh, it's exponential. Right? They like this term, exponential. Exponential is a process where, like, for example, if you have a continuous compounding, right? You put some money in a saving account, you get a certain interest, and that interest gets included in the next calculation of how much you're making. If you continue to do that, eventually you get this process that is called an exponential. Exponentials go very fast. They are very fast processes. Like, for example, viruses in a vial. You have a bacteria. They double. Every time you have something that doubles in a continuous fashion, you're going to get an exponential. So many people say, oh, maybe Bitcoin is an exponential process. It's not, because you know how an exponential will look like in a chart like this. It will look like a straight line. So if you have an exponential, because the log is almost like the inverse of the exponential, so it will cancel that exponential and will make look like a straight line. So you will see a straight line. If Bitcoin was an exponential, in this chart, it will look like a damn straight line. And it's not.
Like a straight line on an angle, or a straight line going straight up?
Angle, but it will be straight. It will be really straight. In fact, I think if I scroll down all the way, I should have a chart of that I can show you. I think I have it somewhere, because it's important. Many people say, yeah, like this. You see, this is I just made it up. It's nothing in particular, but it will look something like that. It will look like a straight line with an angle, and it's not. And that is important, because other models, for example, very popular stock to flow, it's an exponential model. If Bitcoin was an exponential, it will look like a straight line. So S to F cannot be true, because it implies that Bitcoin is an exponential in the way that it's constructed and so on. And you can see it's curving. So it's something else. It's something else. That means it's something else. If there is any regular pattern to Bitcoin, has to be something that is not exponential and is, in a sense, slower, because this is losing ground relatively to the exponential. So it has to be something else. Now, the question is there something else? Is there any particular precise pattern that we can associate with Bitcoin, right? Is this curve that we see here, like, kind of, is there an equation maybe that describes? And yes, there is. And I don't know why it took all this time. I discovered this in 2018, and nobody else before ever showed this. I don't know, because what is necessary to show this regularity that you see here, that is kind of striking. When I saw this for the first time, I fell from the chair. It was like one of these things. Whoa, this is crazy.
It's so poetic.
Yeah. And so what did I do? I did the ultimate transformation. This is the physics ultimate weapon, right? We use it all the time. And this is why it probably took time to discover this, because many people in the financial world, for example, or different analysts, they don't do this. They never do this. It's something that physicists do all the time. And I don't know why another physicist didn't do it on Bitcoin. I don't know. But they did it, there is a paper that came out in 2018, I think, or 19, and I did it myself before, but I did it with price and addresses. So you can show that there is this relationship, like the one that I'm going to describe, is called a power law, by the way, between price and address. But nobody ever done it with time directly. So that is the beauty, because really these two are the essential things, right? How price changes in time. That is really a question that many Bitcoiners ask. Is there a precise way of knowing what Bitcoin is going to do in the future, or how it evolved in time so far? And this is the answer. Yes, there is. And what is the answer? And what is the tool that I use? I use what is called a log. So we show how things became much regular if we take the log of the price, like we did it before. But almost nobody ever does the other thing, that is taking the log of time. It's very unusual. It's very weird to do that, because basically now you're transforming time, where you're allowing time to take longer and longer on the x-axis. And when you do that, now you see a regularity, and a regularity that you didn't see before. In fact, humans like straight line. A straight line, you don't have to calculate anything. You look at it and say, wow, this is a damn straight line. So, and you can see, yes, there are oscillations, right? There are oscillations where the bubbles are still there. But notice what happened. If you, and I didn't draw that red line.
Just quickly, because you may change that slide. When I look at the slide here, it almost looks like a fork of lightning, like, because it is so precise and it keeps coming back to that neutral ground. It's the word, as soon as you showed that chart and I said it, the word poetic, and you can see as you're smoothing it out, there definitely is a pattern there. And it's incredible that Bitcoin doing its thing over time and people getting in, which Bitcoin's predominantly driven by human nature, like greed, fear, the price. But for it to be that clear and concise over time with mathematics is absolutely incredible. It's
incredible. And you see, there are so many things. First of all, I didn't do anything special. I just took the log of time and the log of price. It's something that everybody can do. In fact, I would suggest all, because in Bitcoin, we like to verify and not trust anything. Don't trust me. Take an Excel spreadsheet, download one place where I get my data is called bitcoinity.com. They have a nice free data there. You can put, you can get like an Excel spreadsheet, and you can download it. Go there. I will give you the link. If you
we'll post it in the show description after we're finished.
It's really cool. And then use a spreadsheet. Take the log of a draw. Take the log. You can do a table. You can do a column, log of price, log of time, and draw it. And it's really cool because you can see with your own eyes that now what look like crazy up and down, you don't know what is going on. Look at this chart. That is what we should show on TV, because when people see this, they'll say, what is going on there? And now realize that Bitcoin has done this from when he was a little baby with that, 10 to the minus $1 dollars, that means $0.1, like a few cents, all the way to almost $100,000. It's absurd. And this is, as a physicist plus, we are very trained to look at this thing. In fact, it's almost like a joke. I found a shirt online that says, I went to a physics conference and all what I got is a lousy power law. And it made me laugh because we are enamored with these things. Because in a moment I will show you, these relationships come up everywhere in nature when you have this type of straight line in a log graph. This is the way you identify them if you get a power law. And why it's called a power law? Because with a little math, I don't go into details, but you can write an equation that expresses this behavior. This straight line, first of all, I didn't draw it by hand. I didn't go there with a ruler. There is a method called regression, where basically you ask the computer to calculate the line that is the one that makes most dots happy, most data points happy. So basically, it's the line that minimizes the distance of all the different data points from that line. So it's called the best fitting line, right? So that best fitting line tells us kind of an average behavior of this thing. And you can see how, almost half of the data points are above, half of the data points are below. And also there are very, very precise patterns that we can discuss. Like, it's not that the price can be anywhere at any time. It looks there are very, very precise behavior, right? We go up, and in fact, it turns out we go up for 1 year, we go down for 1 year, we stay 2 years below. Look how incredible, for example, here, around this 3.4. That, by the way, means 10,000 days, from the Genesis birth, right? Because that basically, these numbers here are the log of time, right? The log of days. And so you see how it looks like. In a moment I will show you a nice graph where I can draw a parallel line to this general trend that touches the bottom, and almost all the bottoms actually are aligned with that parallel lines. I will show you that lines in a second. And so it's a very, very precise pattern of oscillations around this straight line. Now, if I measure that straight line, it's the slope, right, of a straight line. You can identify a straight line with two numbers. One is the slope of a line, and the other one is the y-intercept, right? This is high school math, because really the math behind this thing is not that difficult. It's high school math. If you take some minutes or even a few hours to study this thing, and I have tutorials online, etc., you can really, almost everybody that took some high school math can understand this stuff. Okay.
Just quickly on that, I missed a lot of my math classes being a degenerate, and I'm grateful for that, because ultimately that led me to Bitcoin. But just in saying that, I guess just for the audience, because what you are saying is, yes, maybe like foundational, but maybe I miss those foundations. And I'm sure there's other people out there that have missed those foundations. I would recommend reading or listening to the book Scale. It talks about the power law. I think that's a really basic, easy way for people to get a grasp. And I'll also link your tutorials as well, Giovanni. Yeah. Like
this book is fantastic. It's fantastic. Everybody should read it. I say almost it's like the new Bitcoin standard, because it shows how important power laws are in nature. They come up everywhere. They are relevant for Bitcoin. They are what rules cities, economies, companies. It's a very beautiful book, and this is explained in a very simple language, for the average intelligent reader, that every Bitcoin automatically is, because all of us are intelligent if we bought Bitcoin, or if we are thinking to get into Bitcoin. So I really suggest this book. It's a fantastic book. And he has also, this author, Jeffrey West, he's a physicist. He has also a TED lecture that we can also put as a link.
Perfect.
And you can. And by the way, I have a website that's called Bit Poseidon. I give you also the link where I'm trying to make tutorials and explain all these things, so you can follow me along.
Just quickly, that's incredible. I didn't know you had that scale slide, but literally, ladies and gentlemen, like I say it every single day, read the books or eat the bugs. Literally do it. Like, if you want to change your life in any way, ultimately that's why everyone's here. Like, we're going to go into the power law, where the price can go from here to $1 million and way past that. Want to talk about the price getting to $40-50 million, Giovanni. But the biggest takeaway from this, just quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Please, everyone, read the books. Actually do it. Put in the proof of work. It's an incredible book, and your life's ultimately going to get better from that information. But sorry to cut you off there, Giovanni, but if people can read, I think they're winning in life, and they'll get this more and more.
So anyway, so the idea is that if I measure the slope of that curve, then I learn a lot of things about the process that goes beyond that power law. So what do we mean for power law? Power laws, you can show it doesn't take a lot of math. And again, if you go to my website, I have a little tutorial on how to understand how to arrive to this conclusion. But that basically, because we are working on this funny space, right, where we're taking the log of time and the log of price, it turns out that actually there is a relationship of this kind between. It's not really, because sometimes makes me laugh. It was some commentator, some trader say, I don't think Bitcoin is a straight line. Something is weird there. I don't believe in Bitcoin being a straight line. It's not a straight line. It's a straight line in a log graph. That means actually something else. What it is, it's what we call a power law. Why is it called a power law? A power law means that there is a relationship of this kind, where you have y equals some constant, that is a proportionality constant between y and x x, your x quantity, to the power, to some kind of power. That means that number can be 2, 3, 4, -1, any number. It can be also, doesn't have to be an integer. It can be 1.3, 1.5, whatever. And so if you, it's a very, beyond the straight line, in fact, straight line is also a power law, because that number can be 1. So it's a particular case of a power law, but basically it's one of the simplest possible relationship in life, So this, when people say the power law is complicated, it's not. I'm saying that it's some kind of relationship where you have y, in this case, for Bitcoin is the price, right? This is what we add on the y-axis, and x, that is time, of this kind, where you have the price is equal some kind of power of time, of days since the creation of Bitcoin. And in fact, by measuring the slope, it turns out that this n, it's nothing else than the slope of that straight line. And this a is related to the y-intercept, right? Because remember, these are the two things that define a line. You need the slope and you need the y-intercept. And then you get a unique line. If you measure from that graph the slope and the intercept, you get this relationship. I present to you Bitcoin. This is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is nothing else than 10 to the minus 17. That is a very, very small number, 0.00000. And there is a reason why it's so small. I will tell you in a moment. And then days, because this is how we measure time, to the power, 5.83. Notice that number is very close to 6. And there is a reason also for that, because that number, when you have power laws, I say there are so many nature phenomena that are power laws. We always want to focus on that end because it's almost like the DNA, the fingerprint of whatever process is creating that power law. Because that is also the other thing. You need to understand that power laws are not created by chance. There is some very precise process that produces. Is that a spider or something?
No, quick question. So that's a Nautilus shell that follows the Fibonacci sequence. Is the Fibonacci sequence also a power law, or are they different ways of measuring?
In the sense that it's a very precise sequence of numbers that is kind of like what power laws are. But it's very nice that you brought it because actually a few years ago, an article came out that showed that many different phenomena are including shells, not all the shells. Some shells follow this beautiful Fibonacci sequence. Another Italian mathematician, Fibonacci was Italian, like me. And others follow what is called a power law spiral. That is, you have a power law, and also there is some kind of periodic phenomena. And when you combine them together, you have this beautiful power law spiral. And it turns out thorns, horns, shells, and many other galaxies, many different processes are power law spiral that are kind of related to the Fibonacci. And guess what? Bitcoin has both qualities, is periodic because there are these 4-year cycles, and it's a power law. So you can actually draw it as a spiral, and I did it. I have these beautiful power law spirals that what Bitcoin is. I will show you in a moment. But this is a beautiful thing about Bitcoin. So basically how this works, you give me a day, any day, and I put it in this equation, and it gives me the trend. It gives me this kind of center trend, this red line that is kind of an average of fair price, whatever you want to call it. I get that number if you give me a day, right? So if I go back to this formula, so for example, we could say, what was the price of Bitcoin at time 0? The day that Satoshi created Bitcoin. How much was worth it? This equation tells you. Let's put it in. You put 0 and you get what? What was the price at time 0? If I put day 0, right? Bitcoin was worth 0 when it was invented, right? Then I go to one day. So I put here 1 day. What do we get? So let's simplify this with 6. So 1 to the 6 means 1 times 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, 6 times. That is only 1, right? And then I multiply by this number. This is why this number is so small, because it tells us how Bitcoin was worth it when it was day 1. 10 to the minus 17. 10 to the minus 17 means, 16 zeros, 1. It is basically like a billion million of a dollar. So basically nothing, almost nothing. But, something, because it was not 0. It was something. It was 10 to the minus 17. Now, you can go and plug in 100 days, 1,000 days. For example, you can say, hey, how long did it take for Bitcoin to get $1? And it turns out from this equation is about 880 days. If you go and look historically, how long did it take Bitcoin to become $1 in real life? This is just a simulation. This is just an equation. It's an approximation. Yep. So it turns out it was February 2011. That is about 900 days. Okay, so this 910. You guys go and check, okay? So this equation tells us Bitcoin was needed at about 800 something days to become $1. The real result, it's about $900. This is how close this thing is, okay? And you can say, okay, let me see when Bitcoin becomes $100, $1,000, and so on. And this equation is pretty right. Now, sometimes the price will be above during a bubble, for example, sometimes it will be below. But for example, it has incredible regularities where, for example, the price turns out to be at the bottom, turns out to be always, in fact, I can show you this graph, how crazy this graph is. That graph shows 60% deviation from the trend. And it's almost like this incredible support line that it seems almost never violated by Bitcoin. And it's beautiful because it tells us that there is an incredible regularity. Like, so for example, notice how the bubbles, we go away from the trend line, we reach the top, when we go down, again, it takes about 1 year to go up, 1 year to go down. And it's almost like the bubble didn't exist. How in the heck the price knows that it needs to go back to that red line? It does. Okay, this is how crazy this thing is.
Just on this, Giovanni, like this is insanely crazy if this keeps playing. Like over time, you know, like nobody's ever been to the future. Like I have this feeling, and you challenge me on it, but all models will be broken at some stage. But if this is true, can you use something like this to sort of time the tops and bottoms? Like we've got a question here.
Absolutely. That is the entire point, because actually now you have knowledge, right? I say we have a science, now we can develop a technology. The technology is understanding this. And let me say something about breaking model. One, this is not a model. This is not a model. A model is when you have like 2, 3, 4, 5 steps to say, okay, there is this that is related to that, and then I manipulate this. S2F is a model because it needs 3 steps to arrive to where it arrives. Anyway, one day, if you want to have another podcast where I tell you why S2F is completely wrong, you know, not wrong in prediction, but wrong in how it was built, we can have a discussion. But this is not a model. I just draw the data and show regularity. So it's what Bitcoin does. If you are arguing against this, you are arguing against Bitcoin, because this is what Bitcoin does. I'm sorry. Now we need to, like, as a good scientist, like I say, we need to learn from nature. We want to learn from Bitcoin. What Bitcoin is telling us. We cannot be arrogant to say all the model will be broken. No, this is not a model. This is what Bitcoin is doing. So what Bitcoin is teaching us is teaching us that it is very regular, that he likes to do certain things in a certain way. This is Bitcoin's way. This is the path. This is the Tao. This is the Tao of Bitcoin. Okay, this is what Bitcoin chooses for itself and how it wants to grow. What it means that it wants to grow in a proportional manner. You see, you get a straight line. Straight line means regular. But what is regular? Is not irregular is not the price itself, it's the scale of price. This is why that book Scale is so important. You need to understand what scale means. Scale in this case means changes of 10. So this, what is happening here is that Bitcoin, so basically all our interactions, all our desires, all our being together, the market, the miners, all these things that come together to make Bitcoin, somehow all these interactions, and this is when you get power loss, when you have a lot of little interactions, we work together and they create a general behavior. This is why power laws are everywhere in nature, because it's the result of all these little interactions that are basically like a feedback loop. Every time you have a process that looks like a feedback loop, not every time, because nothing is every time. Very often you get these power laws. And so Bitcoin is this power law, and it's scaling up. This is how the language that you will use is scaling up, is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, but is doing it in a way where also time is scaling up. So basically, it means every time we go up by a factor of 10, it needs to take a factor of 10 in time too. That is the regularity. That is the proportionality that we see here. This is why we get a straight line, but only when we consider scale. Do you understand this? Is this clear? Do you have a question about that? Because it's almost like we are looking with a telescope. We are looking at a different level. We are taking an airplane and looking at above. Instead of looking at the trees, we are looking at the forest. And we are saying, this forest is growing in a very regular fashion. It's doing it where anytime it goes up by a factor of 10 in price, it also needs a factor of 10 in time. And when it does that, it does it in a very regular fashion. And that means there is something very deep about the nature of Bitcoin that makes it do it in that way.
Yeah.
It wants to grow and grow and grow, but it says, you know what? I'm going to take my time. I'm going to do it in this regular fashion because that is a healthy, productive, sustainable way of doing it. And you know what behaves in that way? Also, that is a power law. Cities growing that way. And this is why cities are very stable, are very sustainable. It's very difficult to kill cities. That scientist, Jeffrey West, that we mentioned before, that wrote that book,
Yep.
in his lecture, he always compares cities with corporations. Corporations grow in an exponential fashion. They grow. They become big, they're famous. And, most of them die in the process, but some of them still survive. But then they still die, because if you look at historical corporations, there are almost no companies that are more than 150. Maybe there are one or two that are 200 years old, but they die. Eventually they die. Cities are eternals. Take, for example, Rome, right? Rome, 3,000 years. They survive because they grow up in this very proportional, sustainable fashion that is the power law. Power laws are associated with cities, exponential with things like corporation. And this is beautiful because, Saylor says Bitcoin is a digital city, etc. A lot of the things that famous Bitcoiners say, because they look at these in an intuitive fashion, right? They have vision. I don't know if they look at the power law, but it basically like is a digital city. And now we have a map to show, because Bitcoin choose the map of cities, not the map of corporation, and it's telling us something. It's telling us something very important about its nature. So, the understanding the power laws is not a model. It's not a model. That drives me crazy when people say that. It's something deep about the nature of Bitcoin. Okay, and some very important fundamental properties. And it's not by chance when power laws show up in nature all around us. This is a graph where I show these. There are power laws in the planetary motion. Planets, the way that we move around the sun, it's a power law. In fact, it's one of the first power laws that was ever discovered by Kepler. In fact, it's called Kepler's law. So if you do a diagram of the distance of a planet from the sun, and you take the log of that, right? That is the secret. You need to take the log of a distance and the log of a time. And notice why it's logs, right? Because you notice how I put the emphasis on scales, like 1, 10, 100, 1, 10, 100. When you do that, you get a beautiful straight line. That is a power law. Go ahead. You were going to ask me a question.
Yes. Showing that chart, I'll just bring it back up for everyone with the planets. Yep. That just made a couple of things click. Like I go out every night and watch the stars and the planets and stuff. And we're traveling on this globe through space and time going forward. And before we went live, we were talking about the sun going around the moon and how people didn't believe that. They thought the Earth was the center of the universe. But as we're all spinning around and all of it, it sounds like it's following that power law, which I didn't know before, and it's going around in a circle, but we're also going forward in time. So it's more like a spiral as we're going. It's like we're only looking at this on a 2D plane, whereas really like it would really not exponentially, but
and in fact, I have graphs like that. You ask me to move forward, but I can, just as a preview, I have pictures of like a tornado that it looks like it's really Bitcoin in 3D. Because, from that I went, so first of all, this is what you get.
Oh, 2 seconds, let me bring it up.
In a circle, like you can do a spiral. that is, see if this is the linear chart below.
So this spiral here, quickly, is that the same one that Rational Root's putting out?
It's similar in the sense that I follow his idea, so he gets the credit for that. It's not something that he invented, because we use all the time this in science. It's called a polar chart. Basically, every time you want to show a regularity in time, like, if it is like a periodicity, you can do this chart. But, like, I didn't invent the power law. I was the first one to apply to Bitcoin. Rational Roots get the credit to do this with Bitcoin. My innovation on top of what he did was to show that now if you plot the power law, and the power law here, I have two power laws. I have one power law that is what I call the simple power law, that is the straight line. And then I try to kind of follow the bubbles. So I have it's more math, because it's all equations. I'm not trying to fit by hand. I just write an equation that now actually includes the bubble. So I can write, it's just I'm putting on top of my straight line, I put also a sine wave, and saying, the sine wave also needs to go down to the bottom with 60% deviation. So I created what is called the full model. See, the full model tries to follow the bubbles, tries to follow the bottom, etc. So that red line is the red line here in the circle, and the yellow line is the simple power law. Notice this beautiful regularity. So there is the price, of course, right? But what Rational Root didn't show, that this is what Giovanni shows, is that, okay, now if I draw the power law, it's a beautiful spiral. You get this beautiful regular spiral, and notice how the price follows that spiral. You see, I show that there is a very nice regularity. Now, the game between the full model and the simple model is that the intersection between the two creates these regions of red and green, where if you are red, we are above, the price is above the straight line. And so the price is overvalued. We are kind of in a bubble, or we are in the bull market. And the green area is when the price is below the trend.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so you can see it's very regular, because all the bull market up in this region, all the bull market happens in this region in red, all the bear market happens in here, and also the tops are happening all in the same area, all the bottoms are happening in the same area. And it's amazing. It's like a clock. It's really like a clock. And the fact that we have actually these beautiful regular spirals, you will not get them if you didn't have something very regular here in the linear chart, and the two play together. Now you could also do something 3D. I don't know if I have here, but in my website, and I have made like a 3D animations, because now you can do what you were suggesting. You can do a 3D video of these.
So question on that
stuff. And I don't have these slides. I should add it next time I present this. But you can go on my website. I have all kind of simulation where now because it turns out also, first of all, going back to these slides, right? First of all, I wanted to emphasize how important these power laws are in nature. One of my favorite ones, and not just so we go from the planet to physiology. This is physiology in animals. Power laws, like hundreds of power laws. This is my favorite one. I will tell you in a moment about this one. And then many people say, oh, okay, maybe they work in planets, maybe they work in organisms. But humans are now regular. We don't follow precise patterns. Not true, because the Jeffrey West did was to show that, yes, even in social phenomena, we follow power laws. Like in particular, I already mentioned the cities, but also language, social networks, all kinds of things like that. So this is a graph of how the number of cities organize themselves in a country, for example. But, even, for example, Jeffrey West talks about how the number of gas stations in a city is a power law. The GDP of a city is a power law. How fast somebody walks in a city is a power law. The number of crimes is a power law. The number of terrorist attacks is a power law. So all these things where people will think, I like Amos, the Bitcoin standard author. He's a great thinker, and he's one of us, etc. But, there are things that sometimes I don't agree. Like he says, oh, people are now particle, right? He had an interview with Friedman, Lex Friedman, where you say people are not particle. Well, when we work together as groups, we are like particles. We behave like we are ruled by nature. We are, see, like I call it geocentric error. Like, when people believe that this Earth was at the center of the Earth, this universe.
That's pretty interesting.
Humans are nature. Humans are nature. Of course, if there are power laws all over nature, humans are not going to escape. But we are nature. We are
on that question, like people hear that and they're like, no, actually, like I've got free will. I'm not just following. But is where the free will, like we're following the power law as humans, but is free will sort of like the bubbles? Or, like...
Not really, because that is even more like a sheep behavior. It's FOMO. I will say this. Because it's a very interesting question. Two things. One, free will. I believe in free will. I think I wish I actually had a scientific way of showing that free will is real, and maybe one day I will work on that. But because I think it's very important, we do have free will, but some scientists we don't have it at all. I think we have something very, very close to the intuition of people of free will. Not exactly, but very close. But at the same time, I studied, because I went from astrophysics to neuroscience, and we were studying in my lab. We also studied what are called circadian rhythms. We studied how people behave during the day, all the regularity. You see these fluctuations during the day in many different parameters, your blood pressure, whatever, they're called circadian rhythms, because it means almost like a day rhythms, all right? And people follow very, very precise regularity. And one of the things that really almost like shocked me, we had this, like Fitbit, but we were measuring like the raw data. And you can see, you can put all these hundreds and hundreds of people data, because we give these, when we do experiments, we give these watches, people wear them for 2 months, 3 months, and then you can study their behavior, how they move, right? And you will not believe it. Everybody has his own little clock. Like, you will see this person, for example,
wow,
3 minutes standing up and doing something, and probably that person, when he does something, say, oh, I need a glass of water, and he does something. Oh, I need to do this. And he doesn't know there is this clock that makes him doing something very regular. It's almost like there is something internally that he makes have that particular rhythm. This other person is 22.9. So almost like a fingerprint for every person in terms of these regularities in time, right? So a lot of the actions that we do, this is what I'm trying to say, there are a lot of things that we do that we justify after the fact. We do these, oh, why did I like that girl? Why did I choose Bitcoin? We think we did it through free will, up to a point, but there are a lot of things that actually makes us do things without us knowing, inside us. And it needs to be like that, because if you had to make a decision, a free will decision for every single thing in your life, you will get crazy, So it's good that there are a kind of autopilot, a lot of actions are autopilot. Now, when the other aspects of this is when we work as groups, that becomes even less, in the sense that all our interactions, all our way of talking to each other, operating with each other, we start to become less and less, kind of a free will kind of things, right? The herd behavior starts to take place, the interactions between humans, it becomes what is called a network. Think about like the cells inside the body. The cells inside the body are also a network. Yes, maybe this cells is doing his own little thing, this other one, because we need to exchange information, we need to exchange materials, energy, etc. The total interactions, it's something that you can predict. This is why we have a very precise heartbeat. This is why we have a certain temperature, all these things, and needs to be like that, right? And this is why our laws show up in physiology. Like, for example, this is my favorite one, where
just quickly before you move on, because this is absolutely so fascinating. The study that you've done and had these two together. I'm just after like a little bit of clarity. So, like with your individual heartbeat, rhythm, power law that you're following, like flow as you're going through. Can you hack into that? And if you start, because you're saying like it's sort of like autopilot. So if you start adding things in, like focused exercise, can you change the way your rhythm is? And then go off. And then when you go into a group, like you're saying, the groups come together and they sort of synchronize. And I guess that's maybe a good takeaway for everyone. Wherever you are or who you are as a person, you're going to be attracted to a certain group and you're going to synchronize with that group. And that leads to a lot of group think. So just make sure whatever habits or whatever you're doing to make your heartbeat or the way that you're going about your life day to day, because it's going to continue to go through space and time. And then when you're in a group, you want to be in a higher group. So even if you are synchronizing to that group think, you're still at a higher frequency and probably going to do better in the world than if you're not doing the right thing for yourself personally and you're associating with not the greatest group, and I think that's probably pretty important this year. A couple of things in the comments.
The Australian take on things. I really love it. Yes.
Well, it's like the real world takeaway, isn't it? Like Bitcoin's going up into the right forever. You're showing this mathematically in like almost like a spiral or a three-dimensional spiral.
So, in fact, I have even an IP where I actually try to hack the rhythms inside the brain when you are sleeping, because that is another thing you notice, that there are all these very beautiful rhythms when we sleep, and with time they became, as you age, they became degraded, because of different wear and tear in our brain and so on, and that is associated with memory loss, for example. And one of the things I did, I actually invented a device that plays back the rhythms of your own brain, and it kind of reinforces them and makes them and push them very slightly towards in a certain direction,
So you're pushing them just with brainwaves, like super basic. There's different frequencies like theta, alpha,
delta, etc. Yeah. So you want a lot of delta, because delta is associated with memory enhancement, with making long-term memories.
So is it sort of like binaural beats to train those brainwaves?
Binaural beats doesn't but binaural beats don't work during sleep, because you need interaction between the two sides of the brain, and during sleep we don't have that. So I actually like little pulses of sound, like basically I follow the rhythm of your own brain, with electrodes, and then I know which frequency are actually good, but instead of forcing you to go in that direction in a very forceful way, I kind of guide the brain itself to do what he likes best. Again, it's very similar to this idea of listening to the phenomena. Like we want to listen to Bitcoin, we listen to the brain and say what the brain will do naturally, but because it's old maybe, or because of some bad habit, or because whatever, you are moving away from your natural frequency, and we are pushing you towards that. And what we did so many experiments. Memory improves. We have this memory test, and not just memory, but alertness, cognition. We have this basically way of using your own natural rhythms to actually, amplify them and making your brain better. And so with Bitcoin, I think something very similar happens. There are all these feedback loops that interact with each other, and they create this beautiful phenomena, right? And I will tell you in a moment what is beyond VET6, because VET6 is the critical thing. And the reason why I want to show you this graph is because you can understand why that little slope is so relevant. So this graph is one of the most beautiful power laws that we see in nature, and is the relationship between the mass of an animal and how much energy the animal consumes. And you can see, if I take the log, and again, why log? Because you can see, right, 0.1, 1, 10. So if I focus on the scale of the animal, because we go all the way from mouse to the elephant, right? The mouse is a fraction of a kilogram. The elephant is thousands of kilograms, almost 10,000 kilograms. So I have this huge, big range. So I want to focus on changes of 10, right? 1, 10, 100, so on. And here I have a metabolism. So there are different ways of measuring metabolism. You can put like a mask around the animal and see how much carbons, dioxide they produce, many different ways. But we're basically measuring how much energy the animal uses. notice how cool that a human that is there kind of in the middle. We are kind of in the middle of a range, right? Humans are the middle ground. We use about 100 watts, that is what a bulb uses. Right?
Incredible.
Yeah, we are like a bulb, it's crazy, right? You will think much more than that, right?
It's pretty funny that you're saying that we're like bulbs and we use so much energy. Like fairly often on this podcast, I bring up that Bitcoin is just energy, money, we're energy. Like these two coming together. It's the word keeps coming back. Poetic. It's beautiful. It's great, graceful. It's incredible, man.
Hash rate is a power law in time and power law of price. It's crazy. It's all power laws. But anyway, and notice the woman is a little bit lower because you can learn a lot from this graph, right? Because probably they need to save energy, being having babies, or maybe men are, more hunting or whatever, you want to try to understand what is going on there. But, all the deviation from the trend, like, for example, why birds are higher relatively to this line, because if they fly, so they need to, given a certain weight of the animals, they need to use a little bit more energy than other animals because they fly is very energetic. They give up a little bit of efficiency in using energy to get this advantage of flying. So you can actually study this graph and try to understand so many different things about these animals, how they relate each other, but it's a power law. And it turns out that the slope, it's 3/4. And what does it mean? So if I show it in a normal chart, like a linear chart, it will look like it's actually teetering off like this. It's a kind of slowing down, like in a linear chart. What is the significance of a 3/4? It means that somehow nature found a way of scaling up. This is what you will call it, scaling up, making animal bigger and bigger and bigger by saving energy. Because instead, if it was a linear relationship, you will think, right? You double the size of an animal, there are double the cells, right? Because the mass is 2 times bigger, so of course it needs to be 2 times more cells. But this is what you will think, right? And now the energy consumed should go up linearly like that, right? With the mass of the object. Instead, what happens? You get a discount because of 3/4. So if I double the size of an animal, you can take that 2, and then you take the power of that relationship, 3/4. So 2 to the 3/4 is not 2, it's 1.7. So you basically get a 30% discount in energy. So, and by the time you go all the way, because it's not linear, right? So all the way to an elephant that is about 100,000 times bigger than a mouse, you don't get the animal doesn't consume 100,000. I apologize. It doesn't consume 100,000 times more energy, but only 10,000. So it basically has a discount of 10 times. So that means that it's great, because imagine elephants. I don't know if you ever saw elephants. Yep. I saw some documentary. They eat all the time. They take down trees. They eat all the time because they are huge, right? They need to eat a lot of food. They will need to eat 10 times more if it was not this beautiful relationship. And so probably they would not exist. And this is a pity, because elephants are so cute, right? Big ears, nose, how could we have a world without them? We love elephants. We want them.
Yeah, especially the woolly elephants.
Yeah, and they exist because of this. Otherwise, will not exist. Right? So nature found a way of optimizing this process, because power laws, that is the other thing that makes it crazy when people want, they desire the power law not to be that. They don't understand that is actually one of the way nature found to optimize a process. So the fact that Bitcoin is a power law means it found a way of optimizing this process of becoming the monetary system of the world. It's Bitcoin way, showing it's wise, it's intelligent, because this is what nature did in this case. And it turns out, if you go deeper and you're trying to understand why is 3/4, you study it, because this is what scientists do, right? We never stop at looking at something. We go deeper in the rabbit hole, and it's a never-ending rabbit hole. They found out that this 3/4, and this explaining that book scale, has to do with how the different pathways inside the body, because it's a network, all the capillary, all the different way of distributing energy inside the body, it looks like a fractal. And so that number, by the way, almost showing that human beings are like fractals, and so
Wow.
it's really like it's a very deep understanding of nature when you go
Oh
inside.
my gosh.
This is why it's not when people say, oh, it's just a straight line. No, it's not a straight line. We draw a
Wow.
straight line because we want to show it's a power law, and then we
Yeah.
want to understand. So remember, the power law in Bitcoin, it's 6. And I spend a lot of time thinking, I need to get that 6. I need to understand that 6. Because if I understand that 6, I discover the secret of Bitcoin. Like,
It's so crazy, actually, that it's the number 6, 3, 3, 6, and 9. The Numbers of the Universe by Nikola Tesla. And you're searching for the number 6.
Yeah, the power. There is a power law between addresses and time, that is 3. Then there is a power law between price and time, that is 6. And then there is a power law of hash rate and time, that is 12. 3, 6, 12. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
It's kind of crazy, right? So I needed to understand, and I spend a lot of time. One day, after talking with everybody on X and having discussion and debates, I went to sleep, and I think, where that X comes from, where that 6 comes from. For months I did that, right? But that night, I almost couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep, and I had this vision. I started to see all these power laws everywhere. And in fact, I said, you know what? You made a big step forward when you plotted the price as a power law. Why don't we plot all the relevant parameters, hash rate, addresses, everything as a power laws? And I got this. I got all of them are power laws. So we have 6 power laws. We have power laws of addresses versus time, power law of price versus hash rate, power law of price versus addresses, all these ones. And now we know where the 6 comes from, because it's the addresses growing with the power of 3, the price and the addresses being related by the power of almost 2, 1.7. That 2 is really relevant because there was in the 80s, there was an engineer that is actually the guy that invented the Ethernet, and he came up with a relationship between the value of a network and how many members, like in this case computers, because this is what he was interested in. He was like one of the early people that tried to develop the internet. And so he wanted to know, if I double the number of computers in my network, the value, the utility of my network goes up with 2, because I double them, or more. Well, it turns out it's the number of connections. So if you connect, because more connections there are, more valuable the network. And then connections will go up with the square of how many computers there are. So if you think about addresses being kind of a proxy of how many people are using the network, or many members, entities or whatever are using the network, then somehow the price value itself with almost the square. That is what by the way, there is a name for this relationship, Metcalfe. Metcalfe is the name of this engineer. So it's called the Metcalfe law, that says that the value of a network goes with the square. And we don't get square, we get 1.73, but it's very, very close to 2. Because, every time you have something real, it's never ideal like the theory says, right? It's close to it. So when you combine these two, basically goes like this. The price is equal to the addresses to 1.73, almost 2. And then the growth of these addresses goes with the power of cube. And so you combine together, because you take the power of a power, you multiply them by each other, you get 5.65. It is the slope that we observe. So basically, it's a combination of the growth of these addresses and how the price react to the growth that is with the square. That is cool, because let's round it up to 2, right? The power goes of the addresses go up with the cube. The price reacts with the square of the addresses. Let's call them Bitcoiners. So it's something like, because you can almost write an equation that goes, if I have equation somewhere, but it goes something like, let's see if I can find it. But it goes something like this, maybe here. Sorry, I have a lot of slides. But anyway, so it's something like this, where, and here it's actually, let me go back to, I'm losing myself.
It's
We find it again. But basically,
I just want to say, Giovanni, this is absolutely insane. Like, this is literally a masterclass in the power law and a little bit of look into astrophysics. I hope everyone's got a notepad. I'm going to have to go back through and start taking some notes. It's incredibly interesting. It's absolutely fascinating.
It goes like this. The price goes with the square of Bitcoiners. The Bitcoiners grows with the cube of time. And so you take the square of a cube and you get 6. And so this now we solve why is a power law close to 6, right? And because of interaction between these two things. So it's beautiful because now we can put it in, this I got it from the Bitcoin standard. And again, it's one of these things that some very important Bitcoiner discovered through his intuition, through his thinking. But now we are giving the mathematical evidence that and the data evidence that this is true, because basically it's like a loop, like this beautiful closed loop where you can think it's almost basically started with Satoshi. So Satoshi created Bitcoin. He attracted people to join the network and contribute. At that time he had no value, so it was all about time, about running network on computer, putting some resources, and these resources made the value of a network go up. That attracted the Bitcoin price rises, like he says here. This attracted the miners. And by the way, there is a beautiful relationship between price and hash rate. It's a power law. It's a power law with the power of 1/2. And that, and then there is the difficulty adjustment. It is another important thing, because basically that difficulty adjustment is another reason why we have a power law. Because every time you have some kind of feedback loop, or it's almost like a thermostat, so every time the system is trying to go away from equilibrium, the difficulty adjustment brings it back. And the same thing the other way around. If you go too low, it tends to bring it back. So it's like a thermostat. It's and there are many things like this also in the brain. We have like this, they are called inhibitory loops. So in the muscles, there are many different things that in nature we're trying to bring back equilibrium to a system. Or, you can call it control system, like an airplane, right? It's flying, it's going to high, needs to go back, and so on. And that, I don't know if Satoshi thought about power laws or thought about control system, but he's genius. Many times geniuses do things without thinking all the details. They do something, they introduce something, and then everything works out, right? So his genius was say, hey, let's do this thing to regulate the system. And that actually is a key component that was missing here. I added these. It's a really key component to understand why we have all this power law. Once you understand this, I say all the time, it would have been weird if we didn't find power laws in Bitcoin, because to make big power laws, you create all these iterative loops, and you can show mathematically that the power laws come up from iterative loops. And then the power law in time of hash rate. So hash rate is predictable. So because it follows also an equation, it's hash rate equal time to the 12. That is crazy because it's growing. 12 means it's growing crazy, like very, 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 very fast. That is good, because more and more power we have inside, more energy we have inside the system, then means that the system is more secure. It's more difficult to, it's more decentralized. It's more difficult to get 51% attacks, and that indirectly or directly gives more confidence investors who want to get inside. That helps with adoption. And the cycle repeats like this.
So just on that, just to see if I'm phrasing it correctly or picturing it correctly in my mind, with the power law of 12, like you said, like it's really fast, it's really quick, and it's related to hash rate here. Is that because the hash rate is literally pure energy and it's at a high frequency? So as it's going,
so
it's easier for it to grow, like whereas a human or the price is probably following a lower number power law.
Because it's the power law of 1/2, right, between price and hash rate. It's almost like the system requires more and more commitment from you. It wants you to put more and more energy inside to get a reward out of it. That is good, because if it was the other way around, it will go crazy, right? People will take advantage. And by the way, if you read, I wrote this entire article to explain all these things. I think I have an idea of why we get 1/2, and it's all related to the Morse law, because it goes. If you want to listen, it goes like this, right? It turns and it's amazing that the system adjusted itself over time to compensate for the Morse law. You know about the Morse law, right? Morse law, that every 2 years computers doubles in efficiency. So the halving happen every 4 years. So that means that if you didn't have any adjustment, after 4 years, the miners will have a little bit actually quite a bit of a free lunch, because now their computers will be more efficient. They will need to use less energy to get the same hash rate, etc. And so they will get more coins for kind of a similar amount of energy that they spent it before. Now, there is the halving, and the halving cuts that by half, right? But that will mean that the miners will still have 2 advantage, right? Because now they had 4, the halving takes care of 2, but now we have the power law of 1/2. So that 2 basically goes like this: the 4 becomes 2 because of the power law of 1/2, and then the halving cuts that in 2, and so basically means that the miners don't get any advantage from the Morse law. That is cool, because you want a system that has arbitrage just on the edge. The miners make money, but they don't make more money with time, and so everything is in equilibrium. Everything is in balance. I don't think I could have made something wrong in this estimate, and maybe there is something wrong with my logic. But this is why I invite people to analyze it and see. But I think it's right. It's right. It's just that the system balance itself. There was already this difficulty adjustment that Satoshi included. There was the half. Now we know why the halving, why it's important, because it's kind of keep everything in balance. Otherwise, you think that Satoshi didn't like miners, and so he was going to punish them every 2 years. No, they don't make more money, they don't make less money. It's exactly in balance. And I have graph actually to show that is exactly. It's not just that I made it up. I have graphs to show that, right? Look at this. See, this is the yellow line here is the reward of the miners. You see how between the halving, it stays more or less stable. Then they start to catch up a little bit because of actually Morse law. And then notice what happened at the halving. There is a reset, and they go back to balance. So overall, the reward stays stable. That is what happens. They don't make money, they don't lose money. And so it's phenomenal. It's almost like homeostasis, right? In an organism where everything wants to go to balance. And that is beautiful, because it creates this system that is all balanced, all protected, is resilient. So there are all these properties with Bitcoin. And this is why, for example, here I use this symbol of a Ouroboros, the snake that eats his own tail. It's almost mysticism, right? It's like
it is for sure
cycle and these feedback loops that sustain and support Bitcoin. Now, the other thing that people don't realize is that when you have something that scales up like this, it's very, very predictable, because this is an example. This was the article that I mentioned. This actually is this article here: Universal Power Law for Modeling the Growth of Teeth, Claws, Horns, Stones, Beaks, and Shells. Almost.
Wow.
And so from that article, I took this graph. It's almost like the power law. It's almost like Bitcoin. So basically, here we have a size of a tusk of an elephant. And you have 2 colors, because one is the male, the blue one, and the other one is the female. So these are averages of many elephants, okay? And so you can see it's not perfect, because, of course, as physiologists, you still have a little bit of noise, right? With the planet, you get a perfect straight line. With physiology, you get a little bit less of perfect. With social phenomena, it's a little bit even more noise. But you still see a trend, right? And the trend, it's a power law, because, again, notice it's all scales, 10, 10, 10. This is a log graph. So it's not a straight line. It's something that curves, but it looks like straight in this particular type of graph. And the female, it's less of a slope, because it grows slower than the male. The male, a big, huge task, the female less. Like, see how many things you learn. That makes sense, right? The female is slower growth. But you see, it's predictable, because I can say, hey, what is the rate of change of this process at 5 years? So I take it at 1 year, 5 years, and so on. And then I can say, you know what? It's so regular and so precise because it has to be some kind of very precise physiological process that is behind this growth, that I can extrapolate it to 10 years. I can extrapolate it to 20 years. I can extrapolate it to 50 years. This is what scale invariant, this is why it's called scaling. This property is called scale invariant. Invariant, what invariant means? Doesn't change. So that means that I can project it in the future. It's one of the places where scientists, there are two places where scientists can be confident about their prediction. One is when you have something periodic, like the planets. We know when the next eclipse is going to happen because it's a cycle. We can predict things that are periodic. And Bitcoin is periodic, because of a 4-year cycle. And the other place where we can make a confident scientific prediction is when we have something that is scale invariant, because it's not going to change. It's going to continue to behave in that particular fashion. This is why with Bitcoin, we can do exactly the same thing here. And we can say, okay, let me scale it up, right? So what is the price at a given point? It's basically here. Okay, can I extend?
So Giovanni, I guess like the question on everyone's mind, like we're looking at it, time and price and scaling up. When according to the power law, is Bitcoin going to get to like 100,000 or 1 million? Like, I'm not even interested until it's 1 million. Like, that's really about the separation of money from state, as Nico Moran would say. To see it mathematically playing out, like, how can people look at this and they can just see all they need to do is just chill out? They just need to buy, stack, and chill, hold as much as they can, and just let frickin' time play out. Like, Bitcoin's just doing Bitcoin. You said earlier, like, it's the Bitcoin way. It's like it's inevitable. I feel like it's inevitable. Obviously, there's different things, and there's that variant. We don't know what we don't know. Something could happen. But showing us this chart, showing the audience the chart, can you show them where, according to the power law, you believe Bitcoin's gonna be at like $1 million, 10 million, 50 million, how that scales out? But also, what just to like tie it in as well. And what about if we have hyperinflation? Like, how's all that type of stuff accounted for when we're looking at the price?
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to show this graph because remember, so there was a person that kind of popularized my model some years ago. This was like 5 years ago, because I posted initially on Reddit and almost nobody cared. And then this guy saw my Reddit post, his name is H.C. Berger, and he thought initially that I was an idiot because he saw this straight line, and he said, this guy is an idiot, what I did for sure something wrong, and he wanted to show me, he wanted to post back and say, you are an idiot. And then he realized what they did, and he fell in love with this model, and because he's clever, he's a clever guy, he went and verified, and he saw, oh, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. My Reddit name is Physicist One, so okay, maybe he's a real physicist. He knows what he's talking about, and he reproduced it, And then he posted later, because this was 2019. My post was 2018. He posted in 19, and you can see the blue line is where he initially posted. That was where his model went, and then a few years.
Oh my gosh!
In January 2024, that is the red line, he showed what happened. He continued to do the power law thing.
Giovanni, can you scroll in on that red wave by any chance? Can you make that like really zoomed in? Can you like blow up the page? Nah.
I don't know if I can know how to do, but let me try. Okay, here. Yeah, like this.
Yeah. Wow. Look at that.
Yeah. So and notice also the bottom, right? The bottom is really the most striking thing. Like, everything follows. And you know what is this drop here? That is COVID. So during COVID.
No way.
Yeah, during COVID.
Oh my gosh.
So there was a little bit of a deviation from the bottom, because maybe there's some bullish news or something. So locally, it can be affected by local events, right? But notice what happened. The moment there was some kind of disastrous event, the system say, "Wow, I need to reset myself." And where did it go?
Wow!
To the bottom,
wow!
Right? Even during COVID, and oil went all the way to be negative, right? Everything was crashing like crazy. But Bitcoin, that is the other side of a laws. If you go too far away from a power law, it wants to go back. Both when it's overpriced and when it's undervalued, it wants to preserve itself. That is one of the very beautiful properties of power law. They are resilience, because power laws is the result of all these feedback loops. It's like a control system. It's like a thermostat. If you go too much low, it wants to go back. If you go too much high, it wants to go back. It's very see, it's mystical. This is why I'm saying is.
Oh my gosh. It is mystical.
Is for Bitcoin. It's incredible, right? It has all these beautiful
Giovanni, the way that I
don't like what people don't like. If they don't like what they think is slow, right? Because to answer the question, it's going to be, this is not slow. It's 6. When people say parabolic, parabola is square. This is 6. So it's just a parabola. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think like once people are in Bitcoin for a while, their time preference changes anyway. As for like people that are new into Bitcoin, they're like, we want the like stock to flow. I don't know enough about it. I don't know enough about the power law, but when you're showing me these things, like when you're showing like it's growing like that and then it's going back to ground there, like in this chart, it reminds me like a human. If someone's growing or they're having a really fun, hyper time, they're up, and then they're going to crash and they're going to come back down. Exactly. But through that period, they're continuing to grow up and forward through space and time. And that's just that trajectory. And when you see that play out, so I guess one thing I asked you before the show is you created, $1 million. But you also created this, and you've got history. So it's not like you're not guessing, like you've already got 5 years where it's played out. I think people should just get that context, and we'll see. And future's only going to tell us if this is going to keep playing out. But it's for the last 5 years.
Yeah. So let's project it in the future, right? Because we can scale it up following this scaling property of Bitcoin. So 1 million is going to be about 10 years from now. So in 2034, 35. And of course, it's never precise, right? We could, and my friend, Fred Kruger.
Well, it's bubbles.
Fred Kruger, I don't know if you follow him. We are very good friends. And by the way, he's a math PhD from Stanford, and he worked in the financial world for 10 years, right? And he applied all this math to different financial tools, etc. So he's a knowledgeable guy, and
he's very smart.
I was trying to get his attention before we became friends. I was posting my power law in his stream. Hey, look at me, look at my power law. And finally, he noticed it, and he made a post. He woke up, this was a few months ago, and he say, Bitcoin is undoubtedly on an unstoppable power law trend.
It's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable.
A little bit of math, and you see that curve, you immediately recognize it as a power law. You have no doubt. Of course, he went back like a good mathematician. He reproduced the results. He reproduced the maps, etc. And he said something like that. He said two things. One, like I said, guys, how people say the pyramids probably are made by aliens, all those things. I tell you what is made by aliens. This thing is made by aliens. The power law is made. Is this how crazy? The other thing he says, how likely that this thing is due to chance is the same probability that you go on the top of an Empire State Building and you drop a penny, and the penny falls inside a Dixie cup at the bottom of the Empire State Building. Okay, that is how unlikely this thing is. That is due to chance. So it's not due to chance. It's real. It's there, and like I say, it allows us to make these predictions. Now, is it going to be an exact day, an exact minute? That is ridiculous, right? No. And in fact, he even asked me today, hey, can you put some range of times when this is going to happen? I'm going to do that. So you can, I think it's going to be within few months. So we can say within few months, within this date, Bitcoin will reach out.
And just on that, like when you're saying like $1 million, like that's the line. So that's sort of where its heartbeat should sort of like its new reality. that's where it's going to do the next thing to go up as well.
Yeah,
that is like that's when like that's sort of like the low. That's it's
like right now we talk about 50,000, 60,000 Bitcoin like a matter of course, right? I can tell you, I am in this thing since 2012. If I told people in 2012, no, Bitcoin 50,000, nothing, it's going, people will laugh. People literally will laugh, right? At that time. Now in 2034, people will talk about 500,000, 600,000, 800,000 Bitcoin, like a matter of course. Yeah, of course, Bitcoin is this value. And if you just join and you're not a veteran like we are, people will think, that it's just normal to talk about Bitcoin like $1 million,
Yeah.
So this is what will happen. We have a new normal at that time. And so it's amazing because, first of all, this is telling us is unavoidable because, of course, nothing is unavoidable in life, not even planets. Something can happen. We don't understand maybe, and the sun explodes because we missed something in the equation. Very unlikely because we think we understand perfectly as the sun works, etc. But it could happen, right? Nothing is certain in life ever. But it's very unlikely that Bitcoin is not going to follow this path because it's all due to these processes that are all supporting each other and sustaining each other. So it's an unavoidable train. That is a beautiful thing about this discovery. And then, you talk about hyperinflation. That is something that people ask all the time. Listen, I would like, this is a scenario that I think is going to happen, but also my preferred scenario. I would like the dollar to be relatively stable until here to hyper-Bitcoinization. And there are reasons, because if something bad happens where we really go to hyperinflation, etc., the United States is not going to take it lightly. It's going to be something crazy, maybe a civil war, maybe even nuclear war. Something crazy is going to happen then. Because, it's not, people make
it'll affect the whole world. Actually,
the world is too interconnected, it's too linked to each other, and with good and bad things, right? Good things, me and you can talk right now, like if we were friends and sit in the same room. Globalization has some good aspects like this. Other aspects are horrible because they destroy local economies, all kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But this is why we want Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I think, first of all, Bitcoin is what is creating stability. So maybe we will have a nuclear war if we didn't have Bitcoin. So Bitcoin, by people putting more and more value into Bitcoin and moving more of the economy into Bitcoin, probably we are going to avoid hyperinflation. So that is one thing to consider. And really, I think it's too, the dollar is not like other currencies. It's the, world reference. Countries have billions and billions of dollars in their reserves. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. And the logic says it's not going to happen. What is going to happen, that we are going to continue these shitty things of having 5, 6, 7% inflation. That is horrible. It's terrible. But, by the time Bitcoin is $1 million, maybe $3 million, I think by, our ONI attracts more than crap.
It's just education, really, isn't it? Like, as people see the dollar more and more, people are waking up. Like, they actually are starting to get it. Bitcoin's matured enough. It's talked about in the news enough. Larry Fink has really brought it to mainstream. And whatever you think about it, don't buy the ETF. Like, hold Bitcoin in self-custody. Please do that. But however, Bitcoin is actually on the world stage.
The ETF, right? The ETF is also, sure, self-custody is better, and it's wonderful. But, the ETF play a role, because what is the role? I talk to a lot of people that I try to orange peel everybody all the time.
Yeah.
But, even friends, even intelligent friends like engineers, etc., they dismiss Bitcoin. I don't care, or whatever. Right? They have all their.
I think I orange pilled an engineer yesterday, actually.
But this is an indirect way for them to get exposure because their pension fund will decide, okay, let's have a 10% of our funds into Bitcoin. So it's an indirect way for a lot of people that will never get into Bitcoin to get into Bitcoin. So it's another aspect of this adoption that is growing and growing and growing and is doing its thing. So they play their role. People emphasize too much ETF, I think, but in general, they play a role. And the story behind what is going on. So today I was trying to explain this idea because somebody was asking in a space that I was participating in about, what happened if this happens? What happened if this other happens? And my answer to that is, why didn't it happen before? So, for example, why ETFs happen now and not 2 years ago?
I agree.
The story of a power law is this. Everything happens in proportion. And this is why we have a power law. So when the power law, when the Bitcoin was $10, it was attracting whatever energy, whatever resource was proportional for Bitcoin at that time. So maybe there was new vendors coming in. There were a few websites talking about Bitcoin. There were some news about Bitcoin.
Wow.
I think was correctly proportional to where Bitcoin was at the time.
This is truly alien technology, isn't it?
Right, exactly. Everything happened to Bitcoin. It's not that things influence Bitcoin, is the other way around. Or maybe it's a loop, right? A loop.
Well, there's that meme that you can't change Bitcoin. Bitcoin changes you, but it's literally as it's going through and growing and pulling it in, you get sucked into its gravity. And the way you're describing it, you're showing it through maths. You've often said throughout this live stream is very mystical, etherical. All of this is divine. Like for everyone with Bitcoin, $1 million, 10 million, 50 million, it's just like it's inevitable and it's going through that. Unless it becomes decentralized and unsecure, like as Jeff Booth would say. But exactly. It's, man, wow.
Well, so, exactly. So why ETFs happen today? Because Bitcoin was mature enough, it was big enough, it was, because, the same people that were shitting on Bitcoin, like Flink, it was
man. Larry Fink.
Sailors. Look at Sailor. Sailor that now is a saint of Bitcoin. Many people don't remember a few years ago.
Yeah.
He was talking bad about Bitcoin. He was saying, Bitcoin, there is this post where he said Bitcoin will go the way that online gambling went. He was very dismissive about Bitcoin. So he was not always a supporter. Now, what happened, my way of thinking about that, Bitcoin was not ready for a Sailor, and Sailor was not ready for Bitcoin. So everything happens at the right time, because otherwise we will not have a power law. The power law is exactly an expression of these things like supporting each other, like a Ouroboros that is acting like that, and everything will happen at the right time. Like when it's time for Bitcoin to become adopted by nations, it will happen. Maybe it happens when it's $3 million, when it's $4 million. The system will be so big, so overwhelming, so overpowering that all these nations will say, we have no choice. It's like we are winning without fighting. It's like a Sun Tzu. Sun Tzu that,
absolutely. We've got that water upstairs.
The best warrior is the warrior that never fights. He wins
100%
fighting, before fight, because he's prepared. He's creating all the situation.
Wow.
This is what is Bitcoin. Bitcoin is this warrior that wins like he won Sailor. Sailor was, say, okay, don't worry, Sailor. One day you will convert yourself.
Yeah.
Who won? Sailor being stupid about Bitcoin, or Bitcoin won? Flink.
Oh,
okay, Flink talks about Flink will talk about bad about Bitcoin. Bitcoin won because now it's converted. Bitcoin wins everything, without even fighting. So trust Bitcoin. Trust Bitcoin. It's the only thing that we can trust, right?
Oh, it truly is. It's like it's probably the clearest expression of truth on planet Earth that humanity has ever known, aside from the sun, the air, the water, the things that sustain us, but as something for the world to align to. And we exchange our time and energy as a human metaphysical being to do something to either sustain ourselves or to gain or to do a job for someone, and to be able to align with the monetary good that's following it'll. I don't know. Would you class the power law as a universal law? Like, is it a law of nature?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why you find it everywhere, right? You find it in
Wow.
planets, you find it in physiology. It's one of the most universal things that you can find, in fact.
Oh my gosh.
And so the fact that Bitcoin, so I don't understand Bitcoiners will resist, because I find a lot of people resisting this idea, because it should be, whoa, we discover Bitcoin, and everybody should know that. Also go around and say, hey, it should be like, the gospel, right? The new gospel, right? That Bitcoin is a power law. It's like the planets, it's like the physiology, it's like it's like these universal processes, and the fact that Bitcoin decided to become like this and not being like a normal financial asset, it's amazing. I found it beautiful.
It's incredibly, yeah.
So, and I made this. I don't know if you want to show this meme of it I made.
Yeah, of course.
It's kind of a funny meme. Once in a while.
Giovanni, with what I love about the power law is it takes into account like the bubbles, the irrationality of the universe and human nature, but it's still following like a universal law. It's pretty amazing. Like, I still need to go through, and that video that you did with Fred Krueger, we'll bring this up in 2 secs, but that video you did with Fred Krueger, I'd highly suggest that everyone go and watch that. It was like a little bit overwhelming for me, because there's 2 mathematicians talking, an astrophysicist and a mathematician. I'm like, whoa, like I need to get Giovanni on. I need to understand this a whole lot more, but I'll share your meme, mate.
Okay, yeah, sure, yes. This is a meme, so it's basically this idea, how we go from linear, where, it's something that maybe they show on TV. Maybe you want to move it. Yeah, okay, yes, exactly. So, Kramer, is always talking bad about Bitcoin. This is what they usually show, a linear chart, right? And of course, you will get lost and you don't see the signal, right? It's all about pulling out the signal from the noise. And then there is, like I choose Sailor as kind of, like not the average Bitcoiner, but the enlightened Bitcoiner that knows more, but it's not yet, doesn't have a yet ultimate revelation that is, Bitcoin is a power law. And finally, me, being this crazy Italian guy showing you the log, right, and the straight line. But behind the meme is really a transformation. Like you go through, like in our journey of understanding Bitcoin, go through all these insights, and we are forced to see different things that we didn't see before. And I learned so many things by studying Bitcoin, because it's much more than just an asset. And why it sounds almost like if somebody, like if it wasn't like a person that listened to this video that is not a Bitcoiner, where we say these guys are crazy, they are saying all these mystical things about Bitcoin, they are really fanatics. But it's not, because really, if you think about it, Bitcoin made me rethink about money, because being a scientist, I always felt, I'm away from money, I'm not a businessman, I'm this intellectual, and then I realized, no, you're thinking it wrong, because it's all about interactions between people, between values and humans, and what is important for us, etc. So money is very important. The ancient Romans, I am Italian, so like Roman history, etc. When they made coins, they made it inside a temple. It was a religious.
Wow.
You know why banks have that shape of a temple, will look like temple? Because of that. It's from ancient ritual. It's a ritual. It was a ritual for them.
Oh my gosh. So
sacred that when they coined money, had to be a religious act. And then the Roman Empire fell when they betrayed that idea. It was a religious thing. They started to put more silver or maybe other metal inside the gold coins, and that created inflation. And then they couldn't pay the soldiers. They created it was one of the biggest contributors for the fall of the Roman Empire, the debasement of their currency. But in the beginning, it was a world standard. Roman gold coins were the reference for all the world to go by. And what monetary, right? The word monetary comes from. It comes from the word moneta, that means coin in Latin. And you know what that means, the origin of that word. It's the goddess Moneta. So Moneta was the mother of the muses, poetry, science, astronomy. Urania was one of the muses. Their mom, all the arts and sciences, according to the ancient Romans and ancient Greeks, were these muses. They were goddesses. There was a goddess of poetry, there was a goddess of dance, of astronomy, all these things. And their mom was Moneta. And moneta, you know what the origin word of moneta means? Memory. It's memory. So think about it. It's crazy, right? Because what is the Bitcoin? Is a ledger. And, so it's a keeping memory of all the transactions. It's almost, in ancient philosophy, Eastern philosophy, talk the Akasha record, that is this place where all these actions, almost like karma, all the things that we ever wrote. Or in Western philosophy, like we say St. Peter's write down all the acts, everything we done. There is this book, when you go to heaven, you read in the book, okay, you did all these things. So that is the record, that is the ledger, right? And that is what money is. Money, by the way, comes from moneta. So moneta is the goddess of all the sciences and arts, and it's memory. It's the memory of everything. And this is what Bitcoin is. So if you think about all these things, then you realize money is much more. This is why having money, perfect money, that is a law of nature instead of being an asset, I think is one of the biggest discoveries that we ever made. And not because I made it.
It's the most important discovery for humankind. I think that's how the world is saved.
I'm just an ambassador. I'm just an observer. It's not about Giovanni. It's about Bitcoin. It's not about my ego. It's about how beautiful. When I talk about this stuff, it's not that I'm trying to emphasize how amazing I am. I'm trying to emphasize how beautiful Bitcoin is. It's not about me. I'm just like a scientist. I want other scientists to come and study and discover, and we do it together because it's something we do together. It's not something that I do. But it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic.
And having that scientific approach of always like looking at it and seeing if you get new information, if you can break it, and say even if the power law was broken, just for example, from all these scientists, it means all these people are looking and paying attention, and they're going to continue to refine the truth. And like it's a law of nature, and it's following this trajectory. But I feel like aligning myself with Bitcoin, it just hones everything, because like also with money, so many people are scared of it, and then some Bitcoiners like yourself and myself just can't stop talking about it. It takes over your whole life, and someone from the outside could be like, you're just greedy, or you got lucky, or whatever it is. And it's like, no, it's not about that. By like using Bitcoin, saving in Bitcoin, having like storing Bitcoin, and it's so energy dense, I think, that you can use all of this.
If it is true that actually Bitcoin is actually not making us do war, right? That maybe we don't have a catastrophe, etc. And it turns out to be true that actually a stabilizing agent, and is helping people save. I mean, all the things that we know from an intuitive point of view, they are shown by this equation that is true, that is something else, that Bitcoin is something else. And we were right. And it's not about greed. It's not about, it's something actually that is helping the world. And even all this bullshit about, too much energy, etc. People waste energy for all kind of stupid things, just all the people who play video games. I'm pretty sure there's more energy in that than in Bitcoin. Other things, that we waste energy for. If there is something that actually stabilizes the economy, it makes it stronger, it avoids World War III. And everybody should be grateful about Bitcoin. And the fact that now we have a mathematical evidence that is something else, that has properties that are, I want to say, divine in a certain sense. You are right, because this is why we see them everywhere in nature. They are much more than simply a straight line. then it's something that I think every Bitcoiner should embrace. I don't understand. It is greedy to think that we want Bitcoin to be I don't want Bitcoin to be $1 million in 10 years from now. I want it in 2 years. It's very selfish. It's very selfish and stupid. And plus, you know what? Bitcoin is not going to listen to you. Bitcoin, anyway, you're right. And if something else happens, let's say that Bitcoin starts to do something, as a scientist, I say, I listen to nature. I listen to Bitcoin. So if Bitcoin starts to do something else, then it's Bitcoin. And then I'm trying to see the usefulness of this is telling us, look, this is what it did so far. And we have a way of comparing with what is doing in the future. Is also, at a minimum, is the history of Bitcoin up to this point. If it starts to do something else, then we learn from that. Something, then something,
we're watching it grow, unfold, and get resources. And
we need to learn from Bitcoin. So let's go and study. Okay, why Bitcoin did this? Why it's not like Giovanni's power law is broken. It's Bitcoin added to something else, and so we have to bow to Bitcoin and learn from Bitcoin. Whatever Bitcoin does, it's not up to me. It's not up to you. It's not to have to or anybody else. Bitcoin comes first because Bitcoin is the sum of all of us. It's the sum of all our interactions. It's higher than us. It's more than us.
It's almost like Bitcoin's its own entity. Like, say, picture it as a human, and it's growing up, it's making connections, and you can either become friends with Bitcoin and grow up, and then that Bitcoin turns into the likes of Steve Jobs or someone that changes the world, through different inventions or whatever. Just for an example, Muhammad Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Allah, whoever it is, you become friends with this great entity. Grab hold of it. As it grows more and more, it's going to bring more refined, truthful people into it. When, say, Steve Jobs was young, he didn't choose who was around him. But as he grew up, he was pulling more and more powerful people close to him. Those powerful people had other powerful people, and it would go off. But eventually, it's like going through space and time like this and sweeping up most people as they're pulling people in. It's and I guess in saying that, Bitcoin's going to continue to keep doing that. Bitcoin will do what Bitcoin will do. You can either become friends with Bitcoin today, make the most of it, buy a stack and chill. It's what Bitcoin loves you to do. It's what makes Bitcoin happy. Bitcoin will reward you, or you can watch this entity of Bitcoin grow up from now and forever as the fiat currency is dying. Bitcoin's going to keep growing, keep getting more powerful. It's a force for good. You can either be a part of it or you can sit there and watch. Everything Giovanni is saying is going down the rabbit hole, putting in the time. The people that dismiss Bitcoin, it's literally because they don't understand Bitcoin. That's literally the reason, is because they don't understand it. Either ego, a lack of knowledge, a personal bias, whatever it is. If somebody's not buying, stacking and chilling, and even just saving a little bit of Bitcoin, just tithing 10% to the bank of Satoshi, stacking sats, if they're not doing that, it's literally on them. 100% self-responsible. Like Bitcoin, when you go down the rabbit hole, 100% perfect, inevitable at this stage. We don't know the future, but right now.
Perfect. And by the way, I want to say I'm going to do a little bit of self-publicity, if you don't mind. I develop a Discord community, so if people want.
Oh, to cool. We'll put that below, Giovanni.
Yeah. So
man.
So people can, the idea of a Discord community is that we want to create a group of people that are focused, because they want to study the power law, we want to understand it. In fact, in 30 minutes from now, we have our weekly reading. We have a book club where we read the book Scale, and we study together. And then
do it, ladies and gentlemen. If you've got time, join that Discord.
We have classes, every week where we learn how to plot the power law or understanding more in depth. And we also develop, if you want to show a slide.
Let's bring it up.
I develop this.
Whoa, that's cosmic, man. Look at that. Let me bring it up full screen.
Based on the power law.
Can you zoom in on that? Zoom in.
Yeah. So
man, you're doing high quality stuff. This is epic.
the entire idea is that we want to. This is it's not a live trading view, but it's a slide from the live trading view.
Look at that.
We have 4 of them, and basically, see the one that you see below is that spiral. It basically is a projection of that spiral clock, and it's
wow.
how everything is aligned, the top, the bottom. So all this is math. It's not like
oh my gosh,
I'm not adapting it.
Wow.
I'm
TikTok
actually,
next vlog. That's perfect. Yeah. That is perfect. That's so cool.
Top, then we know when we have a beginning of a real bull market.
Wow.
When the bear market ends and everything. So we develop these. We have 4 of them for trading view indicators, and you get them by joining our Discord. You can have access to them, and the entire idea, we want to help each other because the other aspect of the story. So you can do 2 things, right? One thing is don't worry about anything, buy Bitcoin, hold, and it's perfectly valid approach. Nobody can argue with you about that because it's really the simplest thing. Or if you want, you can ride the waves. We call them riding the waves. So what is that idea? The idea is that because these cycles are so regular and they happen very, very
follow the flow.
Maybe you can take a little bit of gains when you arrive to the top, sell maybe 10%, 20%.
I got a good idea.
And then buy back at the bottom. And if you study this thing, you cannot do it without understanding it, without studying, without being very careful. Then you can multiply your Bitcoin. So I want to give you an example. It turns out that if you don't do anything, right, in 15 years from now, so 15 years is double the history of Bitcoin. So it goes like that. Because of the power law of 6, you take 2 times, you raise it to the power of 6, you get 64. In other words, if you wait 15 years, you will have 64 times more money because of Bitcoin. That passively without doing anything. Now, if you play this little game that I'm describing, and again, you want to do it carefully, you want to do it with just partially with your Bitcoin, just according to your risk management, right? So I'm not going to tell you how much you want to do. But if you want to understand Bitcoin a little bit deeper and you want to play these waves, then the result, the stream as a result, we calculated instead of 64, you get 1,200 in 15 years.
What?
Nobody's
Man, mine's blowing.
1,200 because
100%.
But hey, what about 200? So maybe you can do 200. So instead of 64, you can get 200. I think I've
got a pretty good idea actually in regards to that. So for me, I say buy, stack, and chill. The buying is you buy it, the stacking is you put in deep cold storage. But as Bitcoin just becomes the money of the world, as we go through these and riding the waves, if you're the Bitcoin that you have, if you're putting 90%, 95% into deep cold storage, and then you've got a saving or you want to invest with Bitcoin as a trader according to math and follow those waves and allow your purchasing power to go up. Like you want to be in Bitcoin literally to make your life better. I struggle to spend...
Yeah. So let's say, for example, somebody doesn't like this idea of getting rid of their Bitcoin to buy them back at the bottom, or think that is too risky, even with 10%, right? And I completely respect that approach. What about avoiding buying if you do, let's say you do DCA, right? Like you were suggesting. What about using this knowledge for DCA and say, listen, I am in this area where I am so far away from the trend, it probably is going to crash, because this is what Bitcoin does. If I am too close to the bottom, it's going up. If I am too close to the top, it's going to crash. You know what? I'm going to put this money aside and I'm going to accumulate it. And when I go back to the bottom, I'm going to sell. How many shares I have at home? 3.
Yeah.
I have too many shares. I'm going to sell my shares. I'm going to buy, I'm going to leverage, maybe, not leverage in the sense of doing leverage, but maybe I'm going to sell everything I have. I'm going to use all my saving to buy Bitcoin when I am close to the bottom. So this not understanding Bitcoin in terms of this deviation from the trends can help me also to do that. To do
Wow.
what we call it weighted DCA, where you do DCA according to where you are in these waves. And in fact, we are even developing an app to do that automatically if somebody wants to do it using an app.
Wow, that's so interesting. So definitely everyone should check their thing. I've got a meeting in a couple of minutes, Giovanni, which I really need to be at. But your Discord, 100%. I've linked your X account below, so people go there straight away. Follow Giovanni on X. I'll put your Discord there. Where else should we send people, or just a final message for the audience of maybe just buy, stack, and chill?
Yeah, so it's called my main web page is called Beat, like BIT Poseidon, like the god Beat Poseidon, because he's riding the waves. Poseidon is riding. So beatposeidon.com, and there is everything you want to learn about the power law. There are links to the Discord channel. There is everything. So it's a point of reference, and I can give it to you, and you can put it in the link in the YouTube channel.
Definitely,
but that is my main place. We have a YouTube channel, but again, you can go to
we'll put all of that below.
Beat Poseidon, because my son is a video maker. He makes these beautiful videos, high production videos, where we explain the power law.
I've seen a few. They're epic. They're really good.
Nice, right? They're very nice. So go to Beat Poseidon, because that is the point of reference. And I'm going to make tutorials. I'm going to have charts. There are many different things that you can interact with. It's the best way to learn about the power law.
Oh, man. Awesome. I'll put all of that below. This was like a masterclass introductory from an astrophysicist that brought Bitcoin to the power law to the Bitcoin space. Giovanni, it's been such a blessing and honor.
I love your Australian takes and your
cheers, mate.
Philosophical outtakes. It's very wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already, hit subscribe, do something nice for yourself, do something nice for somebody else. Bitcoin is a force for good. Have a beautiful day. Be blessed. Peace.